Cop Block Hot Springs question, who owns the business license, YouTube or the state? The license... I'm about to go on a rant now. Shepard, you want to take this one?
Well, not if you're about to go on a rant. I want to hear this.
Where's my freaking pulpit in here?
Yeah, licensure. Like, there's some things you should have to have a license for, like to get married or something. But wait, no. What should you have to have a license for? I mean, I guess that would be my question. What do you think? And like, this is a genuine question. And maybe you'd have a list of 5 things or 20 or 1. I don't know. What things should I have to go to a third-party group of people and say, may I please marry this woman, marry this man, build a porch on the back of my house, start a business, drive this vehicle? What are the list of things that I should have to ask a third party permission to do?
He was asking who owns the business license, YouTube or the government. And it's an invalid question, is what I would tell you. It is an inversion of the consent that we were talking about. You grant the government power through your consent. In no situation would you ever then need to turn that around and start asking for the government to consent to what you want to do with the property that you own. That is 180 degrees backward, and the fact that people think that this is a valid thing just shows the public school system's success in totally erasing people's knowledge of their own consent. You get to choose what applies to your body. You get to choose the rules for your property and how you use your property, and no one else that you don't approve of gets to even say a word to you about it. It is yours. You are the sovereign owner of your property.
Can I hear an amen?
If you want somebody else to get a say, then you have to give them consent to do that. It doesn't work the other way around. Not even once. Not even a little bit. Ever. Okay. What the hell is a Hotep?
From Dallas, Texas, this is Anarchast.
Greetings, capitalists. Welcome back to Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I will be Patrick Smith, and today we have special guest for you, Brian Hotep Jesus Sharp. He is an author, he is a podcaster, a consultant, a tech startup entrepreneur, having founded multiple companies, including Wazo AI, a company providing camera vision to AI for residential and commercial use, Gifitize, and it's pronounced Gifitize, right? An app making it easy to save GIFs and videos from Twitter to your mobile devices, and Coinbits, a Bitcoin investing app for new and casual investors, and head of the Mogul Summit, where you can learn to destroy socialism by becoming the ultimate capitalist. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Thank you for having me. Wonderful intro. I appreciate you. One day you're going to be on this, I'm going to take all the best intros I've ever been introed, and I think you just made like the top 10 list with that intro.
Oh, snap. I'm getting better. It didn't used to be this way, let me tell you. Man, so I first saw you getting interviewed on other people's podcasts, Joe Rogan, Michael Malice. I love your style. I love how you think. And so I just had to reach out and invite you on the show. The moment I saw your tweet, and I don't have it pulled up here, I wish I did, but it was something like anarchy and capitalism. And I was like, oh, he's there. We got to get him on. So how recently would you say, you came to the anarchy part of the equation?
Well, let me ask you this. How long are we going to be on today?
I have as long as we need, but if you have a hard stop, you let me know.
All right. No, I just want to make sure so I know, how to pace myself through this interview. All right. I think we booked a time slot for about 2 hours, right?
Yeah, that's fine. That's good. If you have 2 hours, I'll go 2 hours.
No, whatever you need. All right. So how did I come to this? I have to thank Chad Lemoyne. In fact, I want to say a few years back, this one kid said, brought up anarchy. And I was just like, what? I'm like, no, I don't like the idea of this anarchy thing. And at the time, it was because I thought of myself as having the capability of being a benevolent dictator. Right. So I thought that government could work under the auspices of a benevolent dictator. Now, fast forward, and Chad Lemoyne of the Aquarian Anarchy introduced me to Murray Rothbard, Anatomy of the State. And then I started doing my research and I looked up the definition of anarchy, because when we use these words, I like to see what the definitions are before the socialists change them, as Orwell warned us. And I saw the term utopian there. And I'm like, I've never heard utopian used with the term anarchy before. This is quite interesting. So as I'm reading Frederick Bastiat and Rothbard, I'm like, yeah, this is the shit I believe in. This makes sense. This makes total sense. So I was like, I'm going to embrace this thing. I love that the term anarchy happens to trigger people. And I love triggering people because with triggering, you actually inspire independent thought. So I love using words that trigger people because it opens the door for conversations. One of the reasons why I aligned myself with the MAGA movement, because it triggered people and that would inspire some sort of conversation. I think that's what people need more these days is conversation to understand each other's thoughts, ideology, so on and so forth. But that was my introduction, Chad Lemoyne. He passed me Murray Rothbard, Anatomy of the State. Mises Institute started following me on Twitter. I've been checking out a lot of their documents on their website. And I've been a fan ever since.
How recent was this that you felt okay with sort of labeling yourself that?
Maybe like 2 years ago, a year ago. I can't remember. I want to say 2 years ago, but I could be wrong.
And I understand why it triggers a lot of people. There's a lot of nasty people that call themselves anarchists out there these days, and it's kind of an unapproachable term to a lot of people. I've heard other people, I use a different term called voluntarist just to be able to talk to people about the exact same ideas of, we want all relationships in your life to be voluntary without the triggering, because when you trigger somebody, don't you think their walls go up? Don't you think it makes it harder to talk to somebody and to make them think new thoughts rather than easier?
Well, I'm a marketer by trade, and in marketing and sales, you always want to trigger an emotion. What I found out as a kid, when it comes to love and it comes to women, it was much easier for you to gain access to a woman's heart if she first felt a way about you, whether it was like or dislike. We see it with kids. What do girls do when they like a boy? They hit him, right? It's just almost instinctual amongst children. We hit to gain attention. And that's sort of what I think this triggering does is it first opens a door for conversation. You see, when you use terms like voluntarist, it doesn't trigger an emotion. It seems very calm and peaceful. So people just, if you're on Twitter platform, they just scroll past it. Whereas with anarchists, it's like, wait, what did you just say? And it's just like, did you read Anatomy of the State by Murray Rothbard? No, I haven't. All right, go do your studies and come back. You know who Frederick Bastiat is? No, well, go do your studies and come back. And then you find that later on, these people come back and go, oh, wait, this thing isn't as bad as I thought it was. So, the triggering, the thing is, I think what you're talking about is a particular mind. You're talking about the mind which wants to stay stubborn, wants to stay in whatever ideology they have. They have no ability to openly think, to be open-minded. So that type of mind is very difficult to get through. And when you use terms like anarchy, you will find a lot of backlash for that. Those aren't really the minds I'm interested in gaining access to or inspiring. The minds I'm looking for are the ones that are like trying to make the decision. Do we go left? Do we go right? Do we go up? Do we go down? Which way are we going with this thing? And there's a lot of, I said this on InfoWars. I said, really, the future of America is based upon the silent majority. And there's a lot of people who are unsure of what to believe because they understand, first and foremost, that what is common thought is probably a lie. So they want to know, well, what's the truth? So they're open-minded. They hear a lot of terms being tossed out. Anarchy is one of them it's very rarely tossed out in a positive light. So when you are able to trigger that mind and say, wait, are you sure this is the way? Now we can have conversation with that open mind.
I think one of the best points you just made was that we probably spend, I certainly do spend too much time trying to reach minds that are mostly unreachable. Maybe that's a failing of my marketing knowledge, because I'm certainly bad at that. But yeah, I definitely spend a lot of time going nowhere. So
those minds I take and I allow them to enter my pseudo laboratory, and we study those minds and we experiment on those minds in order to understand those minds. We want to know, how did that mind get that way? It's not about like, you know, when we talk about medicine, you have medicine after you get sick, but you also have preventative medicine, you know, to prevent yourself from getting sick, as opposed to treating yourself after the sickness has set in. As Hoteps, we believe in preventative medicine. So when we study these sick minds, we say, how do we prevent the next mind from becoming sick? And by understanding how a mind becomes sick, we can prevent the other minds from becoming sick, and we can have well minds that are quite healthy.
I never heard the term Hotep before I heard about you. Can you kind of give me the rundown? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I actually do not answer that question anymore on interviews. What I do is I direct people to hotepnation.com. If you want to find out what it means and everything about it, go to hotepnation.com and hit the FAQ. We have a whole frequently asked questions section there, or you can just in your search engine type in Hotep FAQ and all that stuff pops up there. But to be quite brief about it, we are the guardians of the earth, meant to bring about peace, the Hoteps.
Interesting. Can you tell me where it originated?
In ancient Egypt or ancient Kemet, as we know of Amenhotep IV, aka Akhenaten, Imhotep, the father of medicine. But Hotep is one of those terms that are quite ancient. Right around the time that Mike Brown and Trayvon Martin were murdered by the state. Well, what happened? We came with this very capitalist approach, very anarchic approach. And the black left, black liberals didn't appreciate it too much. So they labeled us Hoteps, because in the conscious community, especially in Harlem, 125th Street, we meet and greet each other with this term Hotep. It's like peace, you know, like peace, homie, I'm out, you know, or peace, homie, what's up? I'm here. So we use the term Hotep because it's synonymous with peace. So because we were using that term, they labeled us as quote unquote Hoteps. And seeing that term become a pejorative didn't sit right with me. So I decided to, myself and the team decided to take that term, make it a moniker, a nom de guerre, and then exalt it. And here we are.
That's awesome. So there's two people on Twitter that really stand out to me, and I guess that says a lot that there's only two, but they interact with other people in the public sphere differently than anyone else. You're one of those people. Michael Malice is the other. And I think maybe you touched on part of why you interact with people so differently, in that maybe people that are closed-minded or aren't there being genuine, you know, consider, you put their mind in a laboratory. Is that kind of part of how you deal with Twitter? Like how do you interact with Twitter without just without adding to the garbage fire?
Yeah. So when I think about social media, we have to think about Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and what they are, what made them so rich, right? What made them so wealthy? What made them so valuable? Well, it's their advertising platform. Google, it's their advertising platform. And exactly what is it that they're selling? They're selling data. Now, you might not sell data directly, but they're selling access to a platform which manipulates the data. So these platforms understand people and they understand their behavior, and they're creating profiles on these people based upon the data, based upon how we interact with each other and we share. Now, me as a digital marketer and marketer, I understand this as I enter the platform. So even when I first joined Twitter, I was very careful about what I shared on this platform, because I know that the data is going to be used for or against me. more than likely probably against me, especially when we insert the state in conjunction with these corporations. So I said, well, if I'm a rat inside this laboratory, then basically we're all inside this lab. The difference is who is going to recognize that we're in the lab and act as a scientist instead of the rat. Many people choose to use the lab and become the rat, and they share too much information. I, on the other hand, understand that we are all inside of this lab, and when I enter this world, I put on my lab coat and I study people. As a marketer, as a fan of psychology, as a fan of Jung, I love studying people. People will say, he's great with people. He's a great people person. I've always been a great people person. So I use this opportunity to understand people. If you understand people, then you can help them. You can help humanity. We can alleviate some of these problems in the world. So in recognition of the fact that we're inside this lab, I use it to my advantage, Hotep Nation's advantage, and the world's advantage.
You spoke with Joe Rogan, and you had some pretty interesting moments in that interview that a lot of my listeners, when I told them that I was going to be talking to you soon, they said, well, you got to ask him about this and you got to ask him about that.
Let's do it.
One of the things I wanted to bring up just to get you to explain to me what you meant, because I don't know if you focused on it long enough in that interview.
Okay.
But you were talking about the history of the black slaves being vastly different from what we are taught. And the first thing that came to mind when I was listening to your conversation was obviously the gut reaction was, oh, well, that's wrong. Yeah, and then I was like, wait. How do I know that that's wrong? And then you realize again and again and again in my life, and I'm sure in a lot of the viewers' lives, like you notice like how much of your knowledge is just assumed because it was built in because of your education. And so I was like, do I actually have any resources or factual evidence that I can use to even comment on this, much less declare that he's wrong? No, I don't really. And so I just wanted to kind of touch on that again. Like, can you give us the 10,000 foot view of kind of what you were talking about, like the things that we might have been mistaught about that history?
Sure. So I as a student of history, I like to look at primary sources first and foremost, and then we can go into secondary after that, right? But I also believe that history is up to interpretation, right? We take these facts and we either interpret them ourselves or they're interpreted for us. Now, a lot of the times we're not reading primary sources. We're reading secondary sources. Houghton Mifflin, McGraw-Hill, our high school teacher, so on and so forth. YouTube videos. So this is secondhand information, which is basically an interpretation of the facts. Now, when you have interpretations of the facts, what you also have is room for the omission of facts. So I always go back to one main document. They say Christopher Columbus is the guy who discovered America. Now we know he never actually landed on the North American continent. So how did he even come to claim that he is the discoverer of America? So we know we've already been lied to. So cool. But let's go and look at Christopher Columbus and his work. Well, he writes a letter to de Saint-Angel, his financier. And in this letter, he says he landed in I believe the island of Haiti or Haiti, Dominican Republic, that island. And so essentially this guy's in the Caribbean. Now, if anybody knows anything about Caribbean, it's just full of black people, Negro type, right? Or Negroid if we're talking about phenotypes. So in this document, this letter, he says that when he met the natives, they were, of course, black people, Negro. As I believe he would quote them. And he says they had boats, many boats, the size of an 18-oared galley. So you think to yourself, wait, these people had boats the size of an 18-oared galley? That's a really big boat. You know, this ain't no canoe, right? Mm-hmm. So then I'm like, all right, let's take what's happening in the past, put that to a side, and let's go to the future or the present. And we look at people leaving Cuba, leaving Haiti, right? So we got refugees that left Haiti, I believe 90s, 2000s. There's plenty of stories of people leaving Haiti, and they're getting to America. So you got yourself, how the hell did they get to America? And these people are coming over on makeshift rafts. Some shit you just pull together just to, leave as quickly as possible. Nothing like an 18-oared galley boat. So I said, if this person can leave today from the island of Haiti and make it to America, why can't other people who have these boats? So I said to myself, it's quite a possibility that these people made it to America. Then I started thinking like a capitalist. I said, all right, if I'm a capitalist, who am I most likely to enslave? Would I take my resources and go all the way across the ocean to go bring people to this new continent? Or would I just enslave the people that are already here? Which brings me back to the letter of De Saint-Angel, where Christopher Columbus says, as he lands on the island, he took slaves. So I'm like, oh, so they were slaving the natives. Now, if you go look at Dutch East Indian Company, Dutch West Indian Company, these people and other companies that were colonizing and running sugar plantations all through the Caribbean, they were enslaving the population that was already there, right? And you go look through all the Haitian history and the history of Haiti, and those are just black people. Then another thing he says was he brought slaves back to Europe. So I'm like, wait, y'all told us y'all took slaves from Africa and brought them to America, but he's taking people from the Caribbean and bringing them back to Europe. That's the opposite of what we were told. And I'm like, okay, that actually makes sense. Then when we look at, there's a great document written by a socialist named Howard Zinn, and a lot of great facts in there. People's History of the United States in this document. And he reiterated something I was taught as a Hotep, as a young Hotep mind, was the fact that the idea of slavery in Africa isn't the same as how slavery evolved in America, this brutal idea of slavery. In Africa, slavery was sort of like definitely indentured servitude. You could have weddings, you could be free one day. In fact, when you were free, they threw parties for you, said, oh, we're glad you could be free. They wanted you to be free. It's just the way they dealt with the lower class. So when they said they sold slaves to these people, I don't think that the Africans sold slaves in the manner of which happened in the Arab world, for instance. Now, when we talk about how Arabs took slaves, that was probably one of the most brutal. When you talk about the Barbary slave trade, I mean, that thing was brutal. They were castrating black men in the African continent. But and we're talking about these other African nations, the idea of slavery wasn't exactly the same. So they weren't selling. They were saying, hey, look, we have these people. If you're going to bring them over there and give them a good life, go ahead and do that. We'll trade with you. No problem. I don't think they knew they were selling them off into, this terroristic lifestyle that these people would come about with these brutes. I'll stop there.
But that's fascinating. Just to examine every single topic that I get to, I realize the extent to which the government and the people in power at the time rewrite history and then teach the new history to the kids. And it only takes a couple generations to completely reform a society's foundations by doing that. And so that makes me paranoid. Like, what foundations is my life built on that were just created by the narrative of whoever won the war or whoever was in power at the time? And that topic just really got me thinking about what's happening in real time right now. Like, I think the president, Trump, is giving his goodbye speech, farewell speech right now as we stream. And you said you aligned with MAGA, and I think that's another sort of rabbit hole. Like, what made you align with MAGA? Was it the political force? Was it the idea of trying to make the country great in the world again? Like, what about it attracted you to MAGA?
Two things. Fake news. He called out the media. I'm like, oh shit, we got a guy calling out the media. Whoa. Yeah, I like this guy, because like I said, I was a fan of InfoWars for a very long time. And I was always looking for alternative media sources. I never trusted the media. My father raised me to be very conscious of that. The other thing was I spent years alarming people to the Clinton family. Right. And so I would always show people videos of people on the island of Haiti. Once again, we're back to Haiti. And they're like, when you look at their signs, it's like a whole lot of castigation and lambastation of Hillary Clinton. They do not like her on the island. And we're talking about after, I believe, it was either the earthquake or the hurricane. I want to say the earthquake. And her foundation came in and the accusations say that, she raised all this money in the island and people never saw any of that. Right. But her foundation made a ton of money off of that. But it wasn't reflected in the representation of rebuilding the island. So I was raising this awareness before Trump even came about. So when Trump was going against Hillary, I was like, oh, I ain't messing with this Hillary lady. and then when I saw black people aligning with her, I'm like, yo, this lady's racist. like, how dare you? I read an article where her and her husband were using the 13th Amendment to bring black men to work, basically modern plantation at their house somewhere down south. I want to say Arkansas, perhaps. And I'm like, wow, this is like a modern day massive, slave relationship plantation type thing, because under the 13th Amendment, it says slavery is legal as long as the person been found guilty of a crime. So again, state is authorizing slavery, and she's using the 13th Amendment to actually have slaves. And I just found that like really alarming that, and then she flipped around and then she started pandering with her hot sauce and all. And I'm like, yo, like my common sense just told me that she wasn't it. And Trump was it. I really just enjoyed Trump. And then Uncle Hotep was using this term conservative. And then this idea of a black conservative came about, and I had no idea what that was, but I had studied Thomas Sowell. I read his book, Black Rednecks and White Liberals and Basic Economics. So I'd studied and watched his videos, and Walter E. Williams. So I was studying that stuff more to understand economics. And then when this whole black conservative thing came about, I dove head in first, like, yeah, let's ramp this up. This is the way. And the other thing is, it's like when you look at the numbers, 90% plus voting one way all the time. And just my good negotiation skill says that's not how things work. When you negotiate, I come from the music world.
You didn't vote for Biden? Hold on. my notes here say that you're black, though. So how does that work?
Look at that comment. He said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. How is it a white man gets to dictate what blackness is, and people swept that under the rug? Yeah. Again, I didn't argue it. I just studied it and said, how does the mind become that sick, and try to understand what's happening here? And then they told you, Republic. So let's go back to negotiation. So in negotiation, I come from the music world. I had a record label, I had artists. I was a touring artist myself. And I know that in order to get the best deal, you have to create a bidding war in the record industry. You get Sony and Warner and whoever else to put their deals on the table. Right. And then you get them to negotiate. But if, let's say your record label always signs artists to Warner, the other record labels aren't really going to vie for your business, and Warner isn't probably going to give you the best deal. But if Warner feels threatened and says, hey, these people might go to Universal to get a record deal, and they've been putting out platinum artists, well, we got to put a better deal on the table. So I'm thinking Democrats and Republicans. I'm like, if we're always going to the Democrats, what incentive do they have to cut us a good deal? We have to at least threaten them with the idea that we might vote Republican once in a while, So from a common sense negotiation perspective, remove the idea of racism and all that, from your mind completely. but like that's just basic negotiation tactics. There's a book, Harvard Review on negotiation that I read, and it's just like all this stuff just goes against common sense.
You can see that everywhere, especially in companies these days. The saying is what? Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. It's like the same cycle happens with companies. They get to the point where they're successful enough that they have some level of monopoly and some lack of competition, and they get weak and they get complacent. And without competition to keep them sharp, then they'll basically become Google or something like, YouTube and all these companies that, like, if Twitter really felt the sting of struggling to continue to exist, how do you think that would affect this internet civil war that I say we're in the middle of right now? They might be a little bit more open-minded when it comes to not deplatforming people they disagree with if they were about to go out of business. But they're not.
No.
They're not scared of that. They're not in danger of it. They can do whatever the hell they want and feel like they're safe. So yeah, I totally agree that that's the case. So back to like governments writing. Go ahead.
Now I wanted you to push back on the whole idea of slaves in America and the natives in America and all of that. Did you have any pushback for that idea of my pontification?
I want to challenge you, but again, like in the same reason I couldn't challenge you when I was watching you on Rogan, like I've never been taught where to even go looking for that information. So how would I push back? What would I say? How could I possibly say you were wrong other than to say, well, I don't think so. But what I just wanted to introduce the audience to was just that little that wedge. I want people to get a wedge in their brains in as many places as possible so that it causes them to not take everything for granted. And to go actually research and think for yourself. The point you made about capitalism was spot on. It makes no sense to fill a boat full of people and then lose half of them to rats and stuff on the way to get them over here. And it makes no sense why you would ever ship them from here to somewhere else if you spent all that time and resources and risk getting them over here. That makes absolutely no sense. And how can I push back? I mean, and where would I go? What would be a primary source to speak against that? Like, where would I don't know.
Like, I even go with common sense. Look at the great Leif Erikson. I want to say Leif Erikson reaches the Americas way before Columbus even is born, right? Like, the Vikings have come across. So I just want people to look at basic geology and biology. And so, for example, when we look at the ocean currents, there's an ocean current that leads from Europe and goes straight to Canada. You don't even need a sail, maybe. But if you can get off that coast, it's going to bring you right here, So if you're in Europe, you want to come to America, you take it from there. If you leave off the west coast of Africa, you talk about these refugees leaving Africa and coming to America today. How the hell did they do that? How the hell does somebody with no resources leave Africa and come to America as a refugee?
And
how?
Another thing, man, that just floored me was when you were talking about how disempowering it was to think that black men couldn't have invented boats and built boats and gone around the world at the same time. And that feeds right into this narrative that I think has really, and I'm a white dude in the South, so dude, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, if the entire world had told me since birth that I was oppressed and just helpless against the systemic racism stuff, and I think that's a poison. Like, that is a poison that could just destroy a person's life by making them not even want to try. And and part of what you were talking about is right in line with that narrative, which again just speaks to it being eminently plausible as far as I'm concerned. So again, it's hard for me to push back because it makes sense.
Well, two people are affected by that narrative: black people and white people. And this is how they created the divide between black and white people. Because if they can make white people think that we're inferior, it gives white people an idea of superiority. And the problem with having the subconscious idea of superiority is you might not reach for more in life. Now, so, and that's really what it was. It was like, especially when we look at poor whites down south, it was like, I might be poor, but at least I ain't black. Like, think about that mentality. Like, forget my blackness for a second. You shouldn't want to be poor, bro. Yeah. But this is what the history books do. It makes white people okay with being mediocre because at least they're not black. At least their history doesn't look like the history of the Black American. So it creates this subconscious habit of complacency where you don't strive for more out of life. So not only did it strip ambition from black people, it stripped ambition from white people too. It's just my theory on the thing.
And it's like, it's an internalization of victimhood. And this is, I think, again, this is the left poisoning everybody now with classes. They divide you into classes and they jam this victim status into people's heads, which just sucks their drive to be successful. I didn't come up, I came up poor, but not destitute. And there's something that's always been, I don't know if you call it broken in my mind, but like when somebody told me I couldn't do it, I tried it. I just tried it. I tried it anyway. Like they told me I couldn't skip school in high school. I started going to McDonald's and walking off the campus. Guess what? You can just walk out of the building and go eat at McDonald's for lunch. Yeah, they tell you can't, but you can. Like just my whole life, you can't build that product. You can't invent that. I'm a tech entrepreneur as well. I just go and try it. Nice. Sometimes I fail. Sometimes it works. And I'm like, guys, why are you telling everybody you can't do this stuff? You just do it. You just try. Yeah. And the poison, the thing that would kill that attitude is what we're talking about. Like where they just tell you, oh, you are in the poor class, you are in the black class, you are in the whatever division you want to, shove onto somebody. And then you just make them feel defeated. Okay, well, I guess, I don't know, I'll just steal from people if I want some, resources or something. Because what else am I going to do? It makes me angry. Yeah.
In a boat, like people act like, they say, oh, they couldn't got here. They didn't have boats. I'm like, a boat? Like you guys act like this is some sort of superior technology that's going to take you to Mars.
It's a boat.
Like how? Yeah, it's a boat. Like how old is the boat? even when the settlers landed here, the natives had canoes. So if the natives had canoes, it's definitely not like some, amazing technology, the boat. This is something that people have discovered, eons ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't really challenge you on it. All I can do is just let you know that you really piqued my interest in an important way. And, I'll go and read up and see if I can learn more. I'm curious about how the current regime is going to write the history that we're living right now. So we've had 4 years of, Hitler, Trump, and now the left is in power. But there's also this counter narrative happening where the left has gone, they didn't boil the frog slow enough. Like they have gone so hard, so fast. I'm kind of glad they did. And like the censorship, I kind of hope they keep going hard because that's going to wake people up faster than if they, pussyfoot around or whatever. But, I just wonder, like, the counter narrative is that people are waking up to the media. I don't know anybody that thinks the media is not biased anymore. So are they losing their ability to rewrite history going forward? Like, how do you think, who's going to write history right now? Who is going to write current day history? What do you think? Because you have the marketing mind, and that's kind of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, so it's going to be mainstream and alternative. And with everything that's happening today, with the censorship, big tech, we're going to have two worlds. And when I say that, the movie that comes to mind is Demolition Man. And in Demolition Man, you have this very Puritan society that lives above ground, and then you have this other society that lives below ground. Now, I took that as some sort of simile for or metaphor for underground and mainstream. And that's what's going to happen. There's going to be a huge growth in the underground world. We have it in hip hop. Have had it in hip hop for decades, where you had this mainstream, then you had this underground. And the underground was very cult-like. You know, these artists don't get the radio play. They don't get the huge tours. They still make a great living. They might not get the Pepsi ads and the Super Bowl commercials and all of that. I think one of the main people that broke from the underground into Hollywood's probably Mos Def, now known as Yasin Bey. But other than that, we didn't really see that. So I believe the same thing is going to happen with modern society, where the underground is going to grow. And it seems like conservatives are going to be pushed to that underground, that alternative lifestyle. We're going to see this underground happen in technology, whereas people create alternate platforms, cryptocurrency, crypto language, etc. But there's going to be an underground version of history. Think about what the history books are going to say about Trump. The history books are going to paint a picture of Trump, which is one that I do not agree with at all. If we look at how the media paints this guy now, and they have no facts to substantiate their claims. But they years ago have centralized education, which is, I want to say, the 8th or 9th tenet of the Communist Manifesto, written by or commissioned by the League of Communists for Karl Marx to write the Communist Manifesto. And those 10 planks was centralization of the education system. And that is to create a homogenous thought. And that's something I don't think we're going to squash. We can deter people from that. But I think there's people like myself, there's people like Michael Malice, Thaddeus Russell, who are writing history books today. And this is information we can disseminate amongst our friends, family, peers, etc. And that will be an alternative. When we think about Hoteps, I always think about the conscious community, right? And when we think about the Moorish Science Temple, we think about the Nation of Islam. And the Nation of Islam, Moorish Science Temple, the Nuwapians, 5%ers, they don't only teach Black history and African history, they also teach U.S. history. So we know about things like 1867 and the incorporation of the United States of America. Like, that's something as a Hotep you're taught in basically like first grade for Hotep, so to speak. So there's ideas and concepts that we understand about the history of this nation that most white people aren't privy to, let alone Black people or other people. But we've always been that underground of the Black community. The Hoteps has been under, so we're used to that lifestyle of being underground, whereas this is sort of new for conservatives to having to go underground. This has been my lifestyle my entire life, is being underground. So, reading the work of Ivan Van Sertima and John Henrik Clark, so on and so forth, Diop, Sheikh Anta Diop, and Shaka Akmos, and all of these people who have provided, Dr. Jewel Pookrum, who provides an alternative to how the human body works, how the Black body works, the body of medicine, the corporate body of medicine. Dr. Frances Cress Wilson and her prediction of men wearing dresses in today's age, Neely Fuller. So as Hoteps, we've always gone to alternative forms of media. And when I say media, I mean as far as documents, tombs, books, learning materials. We've always had to go that route because we knew we were being lied to as Black Americans, and the history of our people was hidden from us. David M. Hotep has written books about the natives in America and their African ancestry. Even Tariq Nasheed has great documentaries called Hidden Colors. I don't agree with everything he says. I think he's a shill sometimes, but his documentary and the people he's pulled in, the historians he's pulled in, have done great work discovering, or I should say, pronouncing the hidden discoveries of African peoples in America, and so on and so forth. So I'm familiar with being underground.
How long has the sort of Hotep thing been around?
When we talk about conscious thought, that's what we would call it. It would call it. So, for example, when we look at underground hip hop, let's go look at early Queen Latifah. Early Queen Latifah would wear this African style Nefertiti headdress. You had Tupac, when he was with Digital Underground, was wearing a dashiki. You had Black Moon, Brand Nubians, like the name Brand Nubian, like Nubian. So there was this African-centered conscious thought. When we look at, if we go back further to 1913, we got Noble Drew Ali and the Circle 7 Quran with the Moorish Science Temple, the beginnings of the Moorish Science Temple. So this stuff is dated, going back to the previous century. Now it gets popular, like I would say around the 70s, where everybody's taking on like these Muslim names and naming themselves, giving themselves, like Tariq, these type of Islamic names where people are trying to refound themselves in Africanness and find that. But in the 80s, it grows. And then right when hip hop becomes popular, that thought starts to die and starts to go even more underground. And then materialism and commercial rap comes about. That's when you have the P. Diddy's of the world and the Jay-Z's of the world, and who make it, Mercedes Benz and, all of that stuff. Before, I remember we had Carl Kanai and Cross Colors. These were black clothing designers. That's what I was used to wearing. I wasn't used to going to wear, like, I remember when black people first started wearing Ralph Lauren. And I was like, yo, we don't even play polo. Like, why are we wearing polo rugbies? Like, and why is that a fashion statement? I didn't get that at the time. And then as it becomes more popular, you start to conform because it's high school, and then we started wearing a Tommy Hilfiger. So it was just like, we started becoming whitewashed, so to speak, and losing ourselves. But that stuff was real big, I want to say, in the 80s. But it really, if you go to Harlem, I got to tell you, Harlem 125th Street, that's even starting to die down a little bit. But that was like the heart of it. Harlem was the heart of that. You go back to Harlem Renaissance on forward, has always been a strong center of Afrocentrism, if you want to call it that. But it still exists today. There's a channel called Sonetter TV where, there's a lot of black thought that's happening, conscious thought that's happening. And some of those voices on there aren't anti-Trump. They're like, Trump was a better option than Hillary. They very much understand this. So we've always been the conservatives, so to speak, of the black community.
So not into mumble rap then?
There's always been dance music. You don't always want to turn on music because you need some deep thought. There's a couple of mumble rap joints. I couldn't tell you the artist or the name of the song, but if it's got a nice little bop or tune, I'm into it. But usually I'm listening to, Etta James, Ella Fitzgerald, James Brown. Like, I love James Brown. I like funk, I like listening to funk. But if I have my choice in rap, I might listen to my nephew Highlight. He makes great music, Highlight Vibe. But yeah, I'm more of a like Lupe Fiasco type of guy. I like lyricism. I like to hear lyrics. Even Black Milk was dope back in the day. Kendrick Lamar.
I've always, since I was young, I think one of the first compact discs that I ever owned back in the day was reggae music. The syncopated rhythms, I get lost in that. It's where I go to think. And then the modern day, just talking about what you're saying, it's not necessarily all about the deep thought lyrics. It's about just the sort of groove to it, the flow to it. And then you get into it evolved into modern dubstep music, which has a lot of those same rhythms and styles from the old school stuff. And that's my jam. So when I sit down to code or, do what I do on the computer, that's what I get into.
Yeah, my dad's from Jamaica, so I was raised on all the reggae.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Man, we wake up Saturdays to clean the house, and my father's got the 12-inch vinyls moving.
So like talking about the internet future, we're both nerds, I guess. And so I've got a lot of thoughts on this too, but what you were saying about it sort of dividing into an underclass and a mainstream class, I see that happening to the technology as well, because these tech giants have a large portion of the infrastructure on lock right now. Mm-hmm. And it hasn't really happened yet, but once you get down to like your ISP level or to your local backbone level, if those companies start, join in the censorship, the internet becomes a very different place, and there isn't currently much tech to route around that. But somebody was basically asking me for my predictions, and I said, well, I think that's it. Basically, what you said was that all the mainstream large companies that control 95% of the infrastructure, they're going to continue. The internet will continue on as normal. It's just that certain types of speech will no longer exist on it, and then there might be some underclass networks that people have to find out how to get access to, where the free speech will continue. I think that's the near-term future.
Then you got the neos of the world who will live in both worlds. Mm-hmm. And that's like, I try to consider myself one of those neos, right? So I live in both worlds. I'll occupy YouTube and Twitter, because how else do you get the red pill to the normies? Mm-hmm. And YouTube does a great job in offering the service of being discoverability. That's why people are here, because they have such a huge network. You can be discovered. I remember I was speaking to this one prominent Black conservative, and we were out in TPUSA flew us out to Arizona for a Black conservative conference. This is before they got real big into that movement. And I was invited out there by Brandon Tatum, and can't thank him enough for inviting me out there. So I was at this meeting, and I just figured I was just nobody. And I got there, and this guy was like, Hotep Jesus, oh my God, I'm so happy to meet you. Keep in mind, this is like one of the prominent voices in Black conservatives, one of the oldest voices in Black conservatism. And he's like, yo, I can't thank you enough. And I'm like, why? He was like, you gave me my son back. I'm like, what do you mean? He was like, my son was headed down the path of becoming one of these liberals and socialists, but he was such a big fan of yours that because I guess his son was subscribed to my channel pre-Trump. So when Trump came about and so forth, or however his son discovered my channel, I red pilled his son. And so now his son is a staunch conservative, and he basically got his son back. And he's like, yo, I can't thank you enough, because now I have a relationship with my son. And you think about that, like a dad and his son, there's nothing more important than that relationship between father and son. I mean, like, it goes back to ancient times of how important that relationship is. So I was like, wow, like, I'm glad I could provide that. Is that possible without YouTube? No, because his son wouldn't be at the alternative platform, because he'd be in the liberal space. The liberal space would tell him that going to that alternative platform is white supremacist or something like that. So he wouldn't even exist. I would have access to that mind. So that's why I like to play in both worlds. I'll be in the underground platforms, but I'll also occupy the other platforms and understand how to move in the matrix. Like a lot of people complain about tech censorship now. I'm not complaining about it. I don't give two fucking fucks about the censorship of the shit. They can do whatever the fuck they want with their platforms. Use the platform for what it can be used for, to build. Don't use that shit to complain. A lot of people use this shit to complain about censorship. Like, complaining has never helped anybody. The complaining is a female trait, right? Men don't complain. We survey the territory, analyze, we plot, we build our troops, and then we march, right? That's what I do. Oh, they're censoring? Cool. What are we going to do about this censorship? That's the only thing you have to spend your mind time on. What are you going to do about it? Because you're damn sure not going to get anything done through Congress, right? And if you did get it done through Congress, guess who it's going to hurt? You. Always. Yeah. If we look at the last stupid 19 bill they passed, they coupled it with another bill, the foreign aid bill or whatever it was. And they slipped that. I mean, 10,000 pages. Like, who's reading 10,000 pages? Who's writing 10,000 pages? But all this money went out to all these foreign nations. The last thing you want to do is give Congress a reason to put pen to paper. Don't ask Congress for shit. In fact, if you're dealing with things like censorship, the last thing you want to do is go to Congress about this. One, they're not going to be on your side. Two, they're going to legislate against you. Now, if you have a personal gripe and you want to take it up and go to court, by all means, go sue one of these companies. You know, if you want to file a lawsuit, I have no problem with people filing lawsuits. Go ahead and do that if you think you got a case. A lot of these companies are already protected, though. They already have, you know, bills passed that protect them. I forget, Section 230 or something like that. I forget what it's called or something. Yeah. But, you know, I just don't really care about the censorship because I've understood this system for so long. I mean, if you read 1984, how do you not know this is coming? You should have prepared for this already, but you didn't. You just joked about it and made George Orwell memes. And now that it's here, all you can do is just meme about it. Well, what have I been doing for the past few years? I've empowered myself and put myself in tech. Because I knew tech was going to be the new revolution. So I started on this a decade ago. I'm not new to this space. I knew this space was going to grow. And I said, this is where I'm going to be. I mean, I was an IT professional in 2000. I worked for L'Oreal in their IT department. I've been an IT professional my whole life. In and out, formally and informally. But I knew this day would come. If you watch the movies tell you this is going to come. But again, you're operating behind enemy lines when you log onto these platforms. Why would you even organize on these platforms so they know when you're coming? Yeah. You know, we just have to be smart.
And that's a larger point too that you can relate to politics in general, like political activism in general, or even protesting. All that is just begging. You're begging the politicians to give you the crumbs off their table. When you protest in the streets, you're just begging. You know, you think you're demanding. You think they give a shit about what you're doing in the street. They don't. They want you to protest in the street because it gets your energy out. It makes you feel like you're doing something. They pat you on the head and you go home, and they keep doing whatever the hell they wanted to do anyway.
Well, what does it really do? What it does is it legitimizes the state. As anarchists, the last thing we want to do is legitimize the state. So when you say, "Hey, tech censorship is happening, government do something," the government's like, you do need me, huh?
Because when you ask for permission, you're telling everybody with your actions that they are the person that has to say yes or no.
Yes.
This is why I talk so much about, we do a Feed the Need event here in Dallas. We have some of the best activists in the world because they actually know what activism is. It's illegal to feed the homeless in the state of Texas. And rather than us go out and beg permission and apply for permits and have them come out and inspect our food making facilities, we carry guns and we go and feed people so the cops stay away. Every year we go out and we just do it. We take the action that we want to be in the world by doing, not by begging, not by lobbying, not by asking for permission. We just do the thing. We take the liberty because it's not up to them. We don't need to ask their permission. We just do it. We take it. Yes, it's exactly what you're saying.
And a lot of people will rebut and they'll say, but the military. You know, we might be taken over by a foreign power. America is one of the most armed nations in the world. And see, what the thing is, when you think about the possibility of nuclear warfare or them bombing the country, this goes to the fact that people don't exactly understand and haven't studied war. It doesn't make sense for foreign. Let's say our military disappeared overnight, right? Magic wand waved and it's gone. China and Russia would not bomb the U.S. Why? The whole point of invading a nation is to keep the resources intact. That's why you're invading.
This is some Rothbard shit here. Preach it. Preach it.
The whole point is to ransack the resources. And America's number one resource is human resources.
Tax kettle.
The best way to invade a nation is to do it subvertly or covertly.
Hmm.
And they've done that years ago. The communists have subverted this nation a long, long time ago and have taken over a long, long time ago. I want to say maybe World War I, World War II, and then some other entities, definitely Revolutionary War, inception of the United States. All that information will be in my new book. But yeah, it wouldn't make sense to bomb us. And if they tried to invade on foot, they got some people armed and ready for that. And I don't think they'd be able to take this nation by storm.
Yeah.
I think it's just a poor argument to say that. Also, I think that the centralization of power within the military is not exactly a bad idea, as long as they're serving the interests of the people. And so when I say, remove government, I'm not exactly saying remove the military power. I kind of like having a good military power. Maybe it's just the imperialism that has been embedded within me as a child of America and the propaganda of movies throughout the 80s and 90s. But I think it's good to have a powerful military. I don't agree with everything our military does, but I don't think dissolving the government means dissolving the military. I think that's one entity we can keep and then put a benevolent dictator in charge of, and I volunteer for that.
Or, private competing militaries that, have to respect the wishes of their customers or go out of business. If they go out and hurt people and ransack places, then they're going to lose customers to the competition that's going to run wall-to-wall ad campaigns exposing the competing military for doing evil stuff. Yeah.
There you go.
Oh.
Yeah.
I want to. What kind of education do you have?
Let's see. I graduated high school barely, and I dropped out of college. There's only one class I took in college. I paid for it was a marketing class, and the guy I studied under was a contractor for DuPont, and his great story was he was contracted to help Tide sell more detergent. And they looked at the consumer demographics and said it's mostly moms that are doing the shopping, which is obvious. And he said, we're going to change this to antibacterial soap to prevent your kids from getting sick. So they invented the idea of antibacterial soap. That was his job. That was his idea. So my my first formal education in marketing comes from this guy. I just took a certification course. Other than that, I wasn't inspired by college. My mother, master's degree, my father, engineering degree, my brother, bachelor's degree, my sister, PhD. So I was surrounded by people who were formally educated. And one thing I understood about all these people they all went to college, but they all worked for the man. And I was like, I don't want to work for the man. So my parents used to push me, your grandmother said you should go to college. She wanted you on her dying deathbed. She said she wanted to see you get a degree. I'm like, I love grandma, but I ain't going to college. It just ain't happening. Because I remember one time I took an accounting class at a county college. This might have been second year. And I saw my teacher drive up and she had this like putt car. And I'm just like, damn, like she's got a degree and that's what she's driving. And then I'm looking at some of my teachers and I'm realizing like, I'm actually like, I can outsmart you. I'm like, I'm smarter than you. So, and when you're young and not that conscious and you have this huge ego, you start to have this lack of respect for formal education. So I never respected it. And I never respected it because when I was around educated people, I was consistently outsmarting them. I was defeating them in arguments. I knew more than them. And I read more than them. So I didn't go to college. I was studying what I felt like studying on my own. I had more skills than them. In fact, in 2012 or 2011, I was hired at a startup. And this was all Ivy League grads. I'm talking Princeton, Harvard, and Yale. Like best of the best were hired at this place. And I snuck into this corporation because, I'm just great at doing what I do. So when the C-level execs loved me, they all loved me. They pulled me into meetings. They pulled me into the Kanye meeting and all these great meetings. So they loved me. But when they'd leave the office, all of the Ivy League students would come to me for help on their work. Hey, I got a meeting tomorrow. How should I present this? How should I do this? How should I do that? And then that's when I was like, yo, what the fuck did y'all go to college for? Like, yeah, I went to the best schools. And I remember I worked at another startup, and we hired this girl, and I said, what was your degree in? She said marketing. And I had to teach her marketing from the ground up. I'm like, you went to college for marketing, but I have to teach you marketing. She was like, they didn't teach us any of the stuff you're teaching me. And so over the years, I just lost more and more respect for formal education, and so, I'm self-educated.
Yeah, I did the thing I was talking about earlier. I was sophomore in high school, and people were like, "Oh, you want to be a programmer? You got to go to college. You got to get your bachelor's, then you got to go back and get your master's." And I was like, "Yeah, but what if I just go get a job programming?" And I did that. I got my GED. I didn't get past my junior year of high school. I got my first coding job at 17. And at the same time, people were getting out of college with master's degrees. I had 6 years of experience actually coding on my resume. Like, so I go to apply for jobs. There's no competition, and I kind of the difference between college coders, and this might be different now because it's been 20 years, but the difference between like a college coder and a self-taught coder is like passion. Like the people that really wanted to code, they taught themselves in the middle of the night. They busted, they did Google searches. They did whatever they had to do to learn because they wanted to learn that stuff. Whereas the people that went to college are just like doing what they were told they got to do to, get that degree so they can get that job. And that's really informed, like when I'm hiring people for my companies, like if I have two people and one's got a degree and less experience and one is self-taught, like it's not a blanket statement. There's certainly people that don't have college degrees that don't have any idea what they're doing. But,
right.
It's not an immediate disqualifier. And I'll actually look maybe closer at the person with self-taught experience. What do you think when you're hiring people like that? How does education factor in for you?
I like educated people because they make great employees.
Oh, that's probably right. Oh, dang.
I mean, to
Touché.
graduate, you have to be you have to be so compliant, and they make the best slaves.
Oh, shots fired! Oh, Jesus!
The guy that did it on his own, I'm wondering, like, how long he said with my company. Like this guy he's been coding apps and doing stuff on his own. I'm like, yeah, he's probably not going to be here for 2 years. But this guy with the college degree, he's going to do whatever the fuck I tell him to do.
Oh. So I've not been hired. I've not been hired because of that. They're like, oh, you're too entrepreneurial minded. You're not going to stay here long. Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah. That's a really fair point. And,
I never hired that guy.
Jesus. Yeah.
Unless he had the passion.
You brought up something though. Like the formal education breeds people that are trains people to be hoop jumpers. And that really affects important institutions that the government has locked people into certain college like doctors. Like, you can't be a doctor without following the singular pathway that doctors have to follow to become a doctor that's mandated by government. And that process that they've created for creating doctors is so rigid and so like, if you don't jump through every single hoop, dot every freaking I, and cross every T, then you don't get that PhD, you don't get that doctorate, and you don't get to treat people, and you don't have a career. And so the only people that become doctors are people that can do that can jump through all those hoops and yes sir, yeah, and toe the line and not speak out against people. There's a guy named David Stewart recently. It's a YouTube channel about the same size as this one, but man, he's wicked smart. He's an author, and he did a video talking about the priestly class of credentialism. How it's just like this. It's like this religion of credentials that are granted to people by doing what they're told to get those credentials. And so when you have somebody with an MD or a psychologist or whatever, what the first thing you get is somebody that follows orders well, and then maybe you get some medical treatment. That's powerful shit, man.
When I think about degrees, I'm going to leave this earth as Dr. Brian Sharp. And I'm not going to do it by sitting in the class. I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to send some university $1 million and say, make me a doctor. This is part of my endowment, right?
Oh, man.
And then I'm gonna pretend to like Kanye has like one of those honorary doctorate degrees, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna get one of these honorary doctorate degrees, but I'm gonna pay for it because isn't that what the students did? Did they pay for the degree? The only difference is they were stupid enough to work for it.
Oh, shots fired again. Oh, yeah. All right. No one left watching is a college graduate.
I mean, college graduates are just people who just love to follow orders.
What? Jeez. My brain is lost track now. Wow. So let's talk about your recent startup, the Coinbits. What do you got going with that? Because we have a lot of people interested in crypto on this channel.
Yeah, the Coinbits is the one that I'm very active with. That was started by Maher and Youssef brothers, Bitcoin millionaire brothers. And funny story with that. So I was in CPG, consumer packaged goods. And the problem with that industry is, it's so slow, right? With software, when you're ready to update a new version, you just upload it and it's there, in minutes, hours, days, whatever it is. With CPG, it's like, oh, you want to change this label? Okay. You create the label, you send it off to the manufacturer, they send you back some samples, you got to wait for that shipping, then you approve it, then you got to wait for them to print it, and then now you need a warehouse to store all this shit. Mm-hmm. Stuff goes bad, and it's just so much logistically wrong with it. And I was just like, I really just want to be in tech. So I remember talking to somebody who was in the spirits industry, and I'm like, you guys got all these athletes, you got all this capital. I was like, why don't you get into iPhone apps, mobile apps? And they're like, nah, we do spirits. All right, cool, fine. You want to sell alcohol and malt liquor, do your thing. So I decided to just dive head first. So I went for my first interview. Keep in mind, I'm used to always getting hired because I'm just a great interviewer and I have so much confidence when I speak and I know my shit. Did not get this interview. Did not get this job. And I was like, yo, what the fuck? I didn't get the job. I was so rejected. So I studied, I knew I didn't get a job because he was talking about all this stuff that I didn't understand, like ASO. So I was like, all right, let me go become an expert on stuff. So I spent the next year studying. So you fast forward 5-6 years later, after I've worked for over a dozen startups, and I see Maher, the same company that I was rejected from, now has a Bitcoin company. So I re-interview with him at this company, and my knowledge is just like eons away from what it was at that time. And we end up becoming business partners. So that's coinbitsapp.com. And basically what we do is we basically onboard people to the Bitcoin world, basically for the retail market, not for like the everyday Bitcoiner, the maximalist. This is for people who just want to get their feet wet, don't know how, and want to reap the rewards of investing in Bitcoin. So that's what we do, and it's a small company. We just hired a couple more people. I believe 2 more devs are coming on board soon, and we're looking to do some make the app better, work on some influencer partnerships. But it's growing, and we're doing really good. We're hitting all of our KPIs, and we have a lot of people invested, and we have a couple of whales. So life is good at that company, man. It's real fun to be involved with that, be involved in the crypto world.
That sounds really exciting. What is, I was looking at your website and you have something called the Mogul Summit where you can learn to destroy socialism by becoming the ultimate capitalist. What is that?
Yeah, so it's basically a Zoom call, a Zoom class. Starts at 11:30 a.m. and we run into the late afternoon. I mean, we've run into 4:30 p.m. sometimes. I try to get out of there like 3:30, 2:30. It's supposed to end at 1:30, but we always go over because I just love helping people with problems. Basically, it's here's what the problem was. People were coming to me for help with startups, or just small business, right? And when I was consulting, my fee was $2,500 for the month starting. And I'm like, these people can't afford that, and they can't afford my hourly rate of $150 to $200 an hour. So like, how do I create a space which respects my time, but allows them access to me? So I created the Mogul Summit, and basically you come in there and you show me your startup, and every week we just slowly build your company, slowly build your business, your blog, whatever it is, and I show you how to become a great capitalist, and really how to empower yourself through things like SEO, organic marketing, paid marketing, which would be like advertising on the Google and Facebook platforms, or ad roll or something like that. But, starting up and then scaling. And it's just a place where people can come and chat with others and solve their business problems. Well, because the thing is, I've been doing this for over 20 years, right? I've been an entrepreneur since like 96. So, I have all these different skills in many different areas. I sold mortgages, so I have this extensive sales background, and I just understand so many different businesses and industries, and I understand psychology and people. So I have this like intuitive thing where I can look at somebody's business and just tell them, how to make things happen. So that was the most affordable way for me to give people access to me. And I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to create a group. I could probably make a really good penny if I opened up a group that wanted to talk about, conspiracies and whatnot. I might actually do it. I've been thinking about it, but I really enjoy talking about business and startups and business development and marketing and advertising. I really just enjoy that. Writing copy. I help a lot out with writing copy as well. I teach them the art of writing sales copy. But yeah, when we think about fighting back against the system, I don't think about like activism. I think like become a good capitalist, like.
Yeah, in your Twitter message that got me to invite you on the show, you were like, I forgot what it was specifically, but you were like, capitalism and anarchy is the way, or something like that. And I wondered to myself, like, which one of those terms triggered more people? Like, what do you say? What do you say to people that just say that, capitalism is the greatest evil on the planet?
I don't say anything. I let them stay poor.
You usher their brain into your laboratory. Is that?
Yeah. I'll ask them questions like, I'll ask them questions just to understand their mind. Like I remember one day, not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, some girl said something I said something bad about socialism. Oh no, I said something to the effect that, socialists and capitalists share a bed or something like that, right? And she was like, oh no, we're completely detached from capitalists. So I posted a picture of Karl Marx shaking hands with Wall Street. I forget the name of the artist's names. It's slipping my mind right now. I'm super tired. But yeah, so she was she's like, what's this supposed to be? And somebody comments, she was like, the fact that she doesn't know what this picture is supposed to represent is everything that's wrong with these socialists. But when you look at the fact that the Bolshevik Revolution was financed by Wall Street, you start understanding the idea of the power of capitalism and how reliant upon capitalism socialism is. So after like a couple of people made fun of her, she deleted the tweet because she realized how ignorant she was. She had no idea that the Bolshevik Revolution is financed by Wall Street. And then I had another time, I said to somebody asked me, said, what is your definition of communism? I see you throw this word around a lot. You don't know what it means. And I said, it's basically centralization of power. I've evolved it now to, and I'm still working on the definition, but right now it's centralization of power under the state. Now, when it was a centralization of power, he said, that's bullshit. And I was like, okay, I just pulled, he said, what did he say? He said, Marx doesn't believe that way. He said he was a Marxist, and I was like, okay, cool, let's go Marx. So I pull up the 10 planks of communism, and right there in 5 and 6, I believe, it says centralization twice. The word centralization appears twice inside the Marxist doctrine, and I'm like, and I haven't heard back from him again. Right? So it's like,
crickets. Yeah.
It's like, so I have fun with them. And I red pill them at the same time, but I don't argue with them. If you want to stay poor, stay poor. I understand what capitalism is, and if people want to empower themselves, they can. Here's how I view the world. I view the world as a bunch of citadels or gangs, empire versus empire. And the difference between one empire and another is the amount of resources they have. And capitalism is the distribution of scarce goods and resources as defined by Thomas Sowell in Basic Economics. So how are you distributing and transferring these resources, right? So economics comes first in building your empire. So I feel like if your people are being oppressed by the government, it's not a problem of the government. It's a problem that your empire just happens to be weak. So I empire build. That's what we do. That's what capitalism is. It's building your empire. When people say, oh, the rich people always get off from the system. Yeah, it's because they're rich. That's how this thing is so set up. But where's your empire? You know, if you had your empire, you'd be able to have some power to pull people out of the system. But you don't have an empire. So that's what I do. I build empires.
Yeah, but you know, I'm in the poor class, and the 1% class don't let me, you know, blah blah blah. They I can't do it. I can't.
Good. Then stay a slave.
Oof.
I'll one day you'll work on my plantation.
Oof. All right, guys. Last call for questions in the comments if you have any. Put question in all caps so I don't miss it. Put your question. Last call for those now.
If you want to submit to a life of servitude with that attitude, well, that's what you're going to get. You're going to be servitude. The only question is who's going to be your master. I have no problem being your master. I'll be your master. I'll be a nicer master than the rest of these masters, but somebody's going to be your master. You're going to do that. Or you're going to commit suicide. How are you going to feed yourself? What are you going to do? You're going to move to the Amazon and live in the jungle? That's an option. You can always do that. You can always move to the backwoods of some place and live in the woods. That's always an option. You won't do that, though, because you kind of enjoy your PlayStation 5, right? So if you enjoy your PlayStation 5, maybe you need to start learning how to manipulate this system, because I believe there's actually not much wrong with this system. The system was designed for the intellectual. The 1% is actually an intellectual class. It's not a rich class. Now, the 1% of the 1% is a whole nother story. We're talking about old money that goes back to the 1200s. You ain't competing with that. I totally understand. But when we talk about the separation of classes, what we're talking about is a separation of intellectual classes and ambition classes. Do you have the ambition to rise up in the system? Because so many people have done it. I mean, look at Madam C.J. Walker. She was the first female millionaire. This is a black woman. If there's so much racism in America, how did a black woman become a millionaire before a white woman? If there's so much racism. So there's always examples of people who overcome it. You know what's the difference between those people and everybody else? The people who make it aren't complaining. They're doing. And that's really what you got to do. That's what you got to focus on. I
don't know if anybody's ever gotten any liberty from anybody by asking. It's always by taking. That is the only way you get liberty. And that's the only way you get success. And that's the only way you survive is by doing. Yes. Creating.
Yeah, look at Clarence Avant, right? This is a guy who's on record as saying, black guy, you know, who came up, you know, during like the 50s and 60s music. You know, he's the guy that put on Bill Withers, and they said, you know, there's this activist that wants to talk to you. He hung up the phone on activists. Fuck these activists. This is his attitude. It wasn't about, you know, complaining about the white man. He was brokering deals between some of the biggest record labels. A black man was the negotiation factor between huge record labels. How did he do that? Attitude, man. The system is for the people who got a good attitude.
It's like so many. It's just so many themes where everything lines up and makes sense. Like they made a structure for you to go through that they tell you have to go through to do anything. Go to college, do this, take that education. Here's the process. Here's the map. Follow the map, and you'll get where you're going. And there's two. It seems like there's two kinds of people, man. There's the people that are like, oh, thank you for the map. I appreciate your assistance. And they start walking down the path. And there's other people that go, well, no, I'm just going to do it. You know, I'm just going to go. I'm going to go to McDonald's for my lunch break in high school.
Yeah. Some of the greatest minds are in detention in school. That's where your greatest minds. If you want to find the great leaders of your next generation, they're in detention. They're in ISS. They're the ones that get kicked out of school because they're the ones that are challenging things. It's the other kids that end up employees, you know. But school is about breaking people. It never broke me. And that's why I did so poorly, because I was always like going my own way. You know, it's just like, nah, that don't make sense. I'm going to do my own thing. Yeah, okay, sure, whatever. I'll do my own thing.
Okay, so you're talking to an audience of almost completely anarchists, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist types. Is there something that you would like that group of people to know or to learn that you don't see enough of, or that you don't think, you know? Don't
deviate from the term anarchy. Double down on it.
Really? Okay.
Double down on that shit. Double down on it. Do not. I see a lot of people, they're going with like agorist and voluntarist. Man, that's some bitch made terms, man. You know, to be rude. Say, take your 5 fingers, reach down into your pants, see if you still got a pair down there. You still got a pair down there. Double down on the term anarchist and redefine what it means. Don't allow socialists to push you off your platform and try to create new terms to pacify a pussy. No, we're not pacifying pussies. We're looking for real men that want to build the next generation or build the next empire. Empires weren't built with pussies. They were built with strong fucking men. You know, so if we're going to build empires, we need strong men. Strong men don't get scared of words. When we look at the movie the Spartans 300, you only need 300 to whoop a whole army, right? So we don't need a whole lot of people to push anarchy. We need a whole lot of strong people. So let's move forward with a few strong minds, a few strong, resourceful people, and whoever gets scared, let's laugh at them. You know, like we laugh at socialists and whatnot, but double down on anarchy, anarchism, rock the A, you know, and drown out the people who give it a bad term. But don't run to, like, I saw that voluntarist term. What y'all volunteering to do? What are y'all volunteering to breastfeed? Like, what y'all volunteering? Right. First of all, I'm not volunteering shit. You know what I'm saying? I need to be compensated for my time. You know, so I'm not volunteering for shit. Now, I understand what the idea behind voluntarist is. I do not disagree with the ideology that goes behind that. I'm just saying, use that ideology to define what anarchy is and allow anarchy to trigger people and use that triggering to open up the door for conversation. I want everybody to do this. It's an experiment. If you got a large amount of followers, say voluntarism is the way, then is the only way. You got to put the word only. Then type anarchism is the only way and see which one gets more responses. I guarantee you, if you put anarchism is the way, it's going to get more response. You need trigger.
Will it give you open-minded responses, or will it just get you, rage, just like stupid rage baiting online?
You need all of that. You see, the rage increases the visibility. The visibility is what reaches that man in the middle. It's the man in the middle you got to get to. See, when you say voluntarism, the conversation, especially with these algorithms, it will never reach the middle mind because so few things are happening around that conversation. But once they see people attacking you and so on and so forth, that man in the middle is going to go, what is this? What's this fuss happening over on this corner of the internet? And then when they read the thread and they start seeing the Rothbard, it's like, oh, I got some reading to do. You create anarchists that way. You create those new minds that way. Now, the people who feed you backlash are the energy that we're harvesting to use to further our movement.
Mm.
They're basically cattle.
Maybe I love how you put this. Maybe we need your marketing genius a little bit. Maybe we can come up with some kind of like hashtag thing or something just to stir everything up. And because the energy you're going to feed off of is the commies. Like when you start taking back the word anarchy, the commies are going to rage all day. And if you can find a way to harness that energy or that as fuel, then you can probably get a message out to the whole world.
Yeah. So I don't respond to them. I let my followers respond to them however they see fit. But in those threads, usually you'll find a person asking questions. And that's that middle mind I talk about. And they go, wait, what did you mean by this? And I'll say, have you ever heard of Murray Rothbard? No, who's that? Check this out. And then we've created a new one. Like, you know how many anarchists I've created? I've probably created more anarchists than anarchists have in the past 6 months alone. You know, of course I'm exaggerating, right? But, you know, I can't even give myself that much credit. But I know personally, I've seen a shift in my followers where they're posting memes. Like when I mentioned anarchy, they're posting the Mandalorian. This is the way, right? This is the way. And even like with what happened on the 6th and how the censorship is happening, I've seen people come back to me. They're like, what was this anarchism thing you was talking about again? You got some more information on this, right? So it's planting those seeds. They'll come back around later.
All right. So anarcho-capitalist or just straight up anarchist?
Both of those. ANCAP especially.
Okay.
I like ANCAP because it's a little bit more specific. When you say anarchist, that couples you in with the ANCOMs.
Which is gross.
Right? That's gross. Yeah. We definitely want nothing to do with them because they're the ones giving us the bad rap. Mm-hmm. So I think you probably want to weigh in on ANCAP, and ANCAP's going to trigger way more people. So I definitely think ANCAP. Hardcore capitalists, don't make them... Here's the thing about capitalism. Capitalism is a term created by socialists to demonize the free market. But we're not moving away from that term capitalist because the term capitalist actually triggers people. So we're weighing down on it. We're doubling down on the term capitalist, and capitalism is the way.
I'm tweeting it right now. Anarcho-capitalism is the only way. All right. There you go. Done. We'll get the rage machine started. All right. That's awesome, man. Okay, so we got 3 questions, and I guess we'll wrap up unless there's anything else you'd like to talk about.
Let's do it.
Anthony Mig asks, is Bitcoin in a bubble? What do you think about Bitcoin? Yes? Yes. Why do you think so? What's the overinflationary aspect of Bitcoin?
I mean, I'm just going off of basic investing know-how. You know, I've read Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, and my traditional investing sense tells me that we are in a bubble. I could be wrong, though, because you can't exactly treat Bitcoin like you would a security on the stock market. They operate completely differently. So in many ways, not factually correct. But my hunch is that we're in a bubble. And it could also be my hope because I want it to crash so I can go buy more at a cheaper price. I don't want to buy at 40K. I want to buy it like 10K, 3K.
I stepped out at 32, 33K when it was shooting up so fast overnight. I was like, okay, I don't have to get out at the very top, but I felt good about it. Now I just need it to come way back down so I can get back in.
Yeah. Can it please come down? I'm hoping it's a bubble.
yeah, please. All right, James Freeman asks, why do Wall Street capitalists fund socialist revolutions? Great question.
Oh, that's easy. So basically what it is they wanted access to the market. You have to look at the relationship of Tsarist Russia to America. I mean, Tsarist Russia was an ally. It was the first to even recognize the United States. They were also an ally in the Civil War, Tsarist Russia. But when we look at Tsar Nicholas, I want to say at that time, he was the richest man in the world. So when we think about capitalists, and some of the rude capitalists, I believe one of them said, competition is evil. So they do anything to like root out competition. So they funded this revolution to basically remove Tsarist Russia and take over the economy and gain access to that market. The other thing is they both have a common enemy. So when we look at what Marx says, he blames the middle class, right? He says we have to destroy the middle class because, whatever, right? Well, what do these capitalists want to do? They want to create, well, let's think of like a little kid, first of all. If you're a little kid and you're playing a board game, and after you win, what do? You change the rules, right? So that's essentially what they use the government for. They change the rules and they make it harder to win. So these capitalists have won the board game and now they control the government. So now it's like, we don't want people to have the upward mobility to uproot us, because you do that through the middle class. So we want to make it harder on the middle class. You know, you got to get a license to do that. And it's $10,000 to get this license and all these things, so they can keep control. So they actually have the same common enemy. Communists hate the middle class, and the extreme capitalists hate the middle class. So they both have a common enemy.
Okay. All right. Last question. Sherry Voluntary, who I think follows you, asks, what is the biggest misconception about yourself that you come across?
Oh, shit. That's a tough question. You know why it's a tough question? Because I don't pay attention to the naysayers. Like, I don't have time for that type of energy. Right? Like how you feel about me is none of my business. If you're helping me and you're growing with me, great. But I don't know what people say about me, because I don't know what the misconceptions of Hotep Jesus are. I think the only misconceptions might be surrounding that moment during Joe Rogan, right? Like, oh, he has this revisionist version of history. And I'm like, no, I have the real version of history. Just go use your common sense and go read what Columbus wrote in his letter. Like, you know, go read Bartholomew de las Casas, go read what Cortez said, and go look at archaeological evidence, or go look at Hawaii. Hawaii had a black kingdom under Kamehameha, you know, like, that's a black man. So, like, I don't know what you want me to do when all of the famous explorers say everywhere they go, they see black faces. So the explorers say everywhere they go, they see black faces. But when you get to America, there was no black faces. My common sense won't allow me to believe that. it just won't allow me to believe that. I'm so sorry.
Or if nothing else, like, take the time to do the research to prove you wrong. Like, don't just say, oh, you're wrong because my public school told me to. My public school teacher told me to. You're wrong. Like, that's not an answer. Yeah. That's turning your brain off. I can't do that, you know? So I think that's the only misconception. Any other misconception? Sometimes people call me a black extremist. No, what is it? A black nationalist. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that even means, man. I'm a fucking capitalist, and I'm here to, of course, being black, like, I have loyalty to black people, but being a person of high consciousness, I don't see myself detached from all of humanity. I feel as though the reason why there's strife in the world is because of scarcity and haves and have-nots. So if I were to become, let's say black people were to rise up and become the dominant nation, right? And so that would mean another group could potentially be oppressed. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't, that's one thing people say about Hoteps. They say Hoteps only want capitalism because they want the power of the white man to oppress others. And I don't know about anybody else, but me, I don't want power to oppress others. I want power to help others. Like, one of my biggest dreams is to open up a orphanage, right? Like a big fucking massive orphanage and have all types of great things happen in there. So like, for me, power is a means of helping people of all colors and races and ideas and religions. So I feel like what happens is people get power and then they exclude people. And then that exclusion of people is what gives them a reason to rise up and invade your nation later on. So I don't know. I don't believe in that. If you want to mitigate the risk, you help all. I guess this will be my last question. How do you, how do we deal from a marketing mind's perspective with the left basically calling anyone to the right of Bernie fucking Sanders an extremist? Like, what do you do with that?
Again, nothing.
Just ignore it.
I think the biggest problem was the right spent so much time reacting. In the last 4 years, they spent so much time reacting to the headlines instead of spending time creating the headlines and then putting the power to the headlines they create. Like Alex Jones, for example, what's the name of his platform? InfoWars. So that's exactly what we're in the middle of. Information wars. The problem is you're trying to combat their information with with fucking spears and they got M16s, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
no, like where's your media outlet? Support your media outlet. Start, empowering your journalists and create better headlines, and stop creating headlines that are in juxtaposition to their headlines. Like if they want to push the, whatever agenda, your agenda is about the family. Well, where's your headline supporting the family? Like put the blinders on and stop paying attention to what they're doing in the world they're creating and create your world. That's what the right did. They spent the last 4 years being reactionaries instead of being proactive. Fuck the left. They don't exist in my world. I laugh at them. The best thing you could do is meme them. It's the best thing you can do is mock them, right? But if you do anything other than mock, you actually legitimize them. I always say this with women. If you respond to a woman when she's arguing with her, you legitimize her argument. When your ladies, yeah, like that, the best thing to do is not acknowledge it. I ain't say ignore. Do not acknowledge the argument. It nullifies the argument. Same thing with the left. Yeah. Don't acknowledge it. Ignore that shit or mock it, right? Or make fun of it. It's the best thing you can do if you're going to acknowledge it. But the most time I don't do that. I don't pay attention. People like sometimes people like they tag me. I get tagged and stuff all day. I'm very thankful for it. People tag me and it keeps me aware of things. Sometimes tag me and shit. I'm like, I don't care. Like, who cares? Shit ain't got nothing to do with me. Tag me some shit about Bitcoin.
There's a lot of power in ignoring somebody. It shows them that they don't have power. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hillaway donated 5 super chat. Thank you, sir. Hotep Jesus, bring conservatives, libertarians, and black people together. Respect. All right, man.
Yeah, that's the power.
Sir, I have really, really enjoyed this talk. Thanks for coming on the show. You are amazing. Tell people where they can find you.
Hotep Jesus on Twitter. If you want to log into my world, it's bryansharp.co, bryansharpe.co. Subscribe to my email list. I do some communications there. But yeah, it's a great conversation, man. I had more fun than I expected.
I'm glad I exceeded your expectations. Guys, let me show you guys something that we just got for supporters on my other channel, and then we'll wrap it up. Let me actually switch this background right here on one of our other channels. We just finished this new animated background that I think some of you guys will like. This is for supporters only, so if you want to be a supporter of our platform, go to anarchast.com/support, and you will find the options there to just tip us in the hat a little bit, and you will get this animated wallpaper that you can use on your own computers wherever you want, or for your desktop wallpapers or whatever. That's a new perk just out for y'all. So we'll leave that up for a little bit. There's an Anarchast one coming out now. This one's for the Disenthrall channel. So you see the little cube up there. All right, guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. You've been a good audience. Thanks for your questions. Mr. Jesus, thank you for your time. I hope to have you back on sometime. Take it easy.
Thank you, man.
All right, guys. Peace. Love. Anarchy.